Morgan, welcome to the 20-something podcast.
First and foremost, a mom of three. I just turned 40. 12 years ago, I started working on a brand called Primal Kitchen before it was called Primal Kitchen. And then I moved to South America. I lived off like $8,000 a year. Then became a co-founder of that business.
Well, Morgan, welcome to the 20-something podcast. I'm so excited to have you here. I will have you give just like your little elevator pitch, tell everybody who you are, what you do, and then from there we'll kind of take it back to your 20s and we'll write out that timeline.
Perfect. I love it. So who I am and what I do. Let's see. I first and foremost a mom of three. I just turned 40. Like 12 years ago, I started working on a brand called Primal Kitchen before it was called Primal Kitchen. We launched that product, brought it to market, and sold it to Kraft Heinz 6 years ago. I stayed on, ran the company for 5 years, and now I'm consulting for Kraft Heinz, consulting for a big private equity fund, and working on a little passion side project, new brand, my own.
Very cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. So you are still with Primal Kitchen or?
I'm an advisor. I'm not in like
Okay.
a day-to-day operating role. I'm almost more of like a board member at this point, if you will.
Okay, gotcha. All right. Well, I guess we'll figure out how we got there, but let's walk it back to your 20s and wherever you want to start, kind of go through that timeline and we'll see where we get to from there.
Cool. Sure. So let's see, I went to the University of Colorado and CU Boulder, got an accounting degree, actually went in psychology and then realized how much science I had to take, was like, this is going to be really hard for me. And switched to the business school, and the hardest major in the business school was accounting, and math was always just like really easy for me. So I switched into the accounting program. I graduated 4 years. I graduated in 06. So the job market was pretty great. It was kind of like an easy time, right? Like we hadn't hit the 08 like crisis yet. And I got 2 job offers. Actually, I lived in Denver after college, 2 job offers on the same day. One, I got a job offer to be a staff accountant at a firm in Denver, and then another one to be a recruiter. So, and I actually took the recruiting job. You'll love this because it came with a BlackBerry. So you probably don't even know what a BlackBerry is.
Hey, I had a BlackBerry.
Okay. All right. I love it. So I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. I got a BlackBerry. Like, this is my priorities at 22, right? And I did this recruiting job for like 3 days. And then I was like, oh my God, I had like this panic attack. I was like, I made the wrong decision. I wonder if the accounting firm hired someone else. I called the accounting firm back and I was like, you know what? I think I made a mistake. I would love to still come work for you guys if you're open to it. And they were like, sure. When can you start? So I quit the recruiting job after 3 days, moved over to the accounting firm. Where I stayed for 9 months. So it wasn't a long tenure there either.
Yeah.
And I quit to go be a waitress at my aunt and uncle's dirty dancing type resort in northern Wisconsin. And then I moved to South America. I was supposed to just go on like a 6-month trip, but I had saved up money waitressing and working at the accounting firm and wanted to live abroad. And I was like, this is a great time to do it. I'll just do the 6-month trip in South America. So I convinced one of my best friends, Anna, who actually was my first hire at Primal Kitchen. So she still works with me today. But I convinced her to come down with me. And our 6-month trip turned into like a 2.5-year kind of traveling journey. So I was living all over South America, traveling by bus. I lived off like $8,000 a year. I had a job doing research for a author. So I was actually making like 10 to 12K a year, but living off 8, and I had savings. And I came back in the summer and waitressed again, and then went back down with my cousin to Mexico. So yeah, it just ended up, it culminated in me getting my yoga certification in Hawaii. I learned how to surf.
Oh, dang.
No, your face, you're just like this, like, all over the place.
I learned how to surf. I don't want to interrupt you, but going the Wisconsin thing, that's where I'm from. Where in Wisconsin did you waitress at?
Up north on Trout Lake, like north of Minocqua, if you know where Minocqua is.
Yes, I do. I have family up there. That's
no way.
Small world. Okay.
Where are you from in Wisconsin?
From a small town. It's called Toma. It's in between La Crosse and Wisconsin Dells.
Nice.
Yeah.
I love it.
Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you. I was like, oh my God,
still my favorite place ever.
Yeah.
In the summer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was that. So yeah, I got my yoga certification in Hawaii, and then I kind of came home and had this just like I had learned how to surf. So I spent a ton of time surfing in South America. I didn't want to go on a surf lesson. I had met, this story is like so fragmented, but I had met 3 girls from Ireland when I was living in Buenos Aires in Argentina, and they were traveling like a whole year. So I ended up just traveling with them for like 18 months. So they were like, we're going to go do a surf lesson. And I was like, no, I'm a lake girl. Like, I don't surf. And they're like, no, no, you have to come. We went, I got like pushed into my first wave, stood up, and I was like totally hooked, was like all I wanted to do. So I spent like months just learning how to surf in Ecuador and Peru. And I lived in surf towns in Mexico and Costa Rica, kind of all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so that was my like fun vagabond period of my 20s. I came home, I had really bad I call it reverse culture shock. I was like, people are spending, at the time it was like $100 on jeans. Now I feel like that would be like really cheap for jeans.
Yeah.
But at the time I was like, who are these people? Like maybe they were like $190 at Anthropologie. And I was like, I can't, like, I've been living off 8 grand a year. I don't fit in here, but I don't fit in South America. Like, what do I want to do with my life? Do I want to be these are all the careers I considered. Some of them, like, do I want to be a naturopathic doctor? Do I want to be a sex therapist? Do I want to be a teacher? Should I be a nurse? Like, I just totally was like lost. Like, what am I doing? What do I want to do? The big questions, you're supposed to ask yourself in your 20s.
Yeah.
And then I got a job at my friend's sister hired me. I was living with my parents. She hired me. She had like this backpack company. So I was like helping her on the accounting side, which was fun for a little while. And then I ended up going to work at a small boutique advertising agency and managed the Frito-Lay account. So I kind of think that was my real job, my first kind of real job in a sense.
Yeah.
I mean, the accounting firm, yes, but I stayed there for almost 3 years, grew a nice portfolio of clients, and really just like kind of excelled in that environment. And then I was living in Milwaukee, Wisconsin when I was working for the advertising agency, and I surfed Lake Michigan in the winter with like a hood. You have to surf wind swells, like a hood,
Yeah.
the booties, the mittens, the whole thing. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, checked that bucket list. Like, what am I doing here? Like, I'm out. So I came to visit California. I'd never been before, visited Manhattan Beach, and I was like, oh, I'm sold. Like, this is where I'm moving. So 3 months later, I broke up with my boyfriend at the time, and 3 months later, I moved to LA. Um,
Wow.
I stayed working for the advertising agency for a while, and then I was obsessed with, I had my own health and wellness journey like woven into this whole story, right? That had been going on for kind of years. And I was really into like healthy foods and healthy drinks and stuff with low sugar. And there was a brand I loved, Kavita. And I reached out to their like VP of sales on LinkedIn, and I was like, are you guys hiring? They were like a tiny business. I would like buy a Kavita when I went shopping at Whole Foods. I mean, they've since sold to PepsiCo. When I was working there, they were like sub 10 million in revenue, small. And I was like, are you guys hiring? They're like, actually, we need a marketing director. So I somehow got this marketing director job. And the woman who hired me there, Amanda, was she wasn't our first official employee, but she was an advisor from day one at Primal Kitchen. I brought her over to Primal Kitchen, and she still works over there today. She's amazing. So yeah, that was kind of my journey. And then Kavita sponsored an event. I knew who this guy, Mark Sisson, was. He was a big blogger in the paleo space, and I wanted to meet him. I didn't have to go to this event, but I wanted to meet him. So I went to the event, and then I met Mark. I ended up giving him and his wife a ride home back to their hotel room, or their hotel. And then I quit Kavita because it was crazy. And Mark called randomly like 3 months later and was like, hey, well, I'm working on this like food concept. Do you think you can help? So I came on working for him as like a $50 an hour marketing consultant.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, renamed the brand in our first meeting, did the whole package design, hired out our broker, like just did everything, became a co-founder of that business, and
Mm-hmm.
then led the strategy through to the exit to Kraft Heinz.
Wow.
Here I am.
You did a lot in your 20s.
I did a lot. I did. Yeah, I really did my 20s.
Yeah. How old were you when you stopped the travel and got your quote unquote real job?
Let's see. God, I was probably 24, 25. I'm
Okay.
trying to think, like I graduated at 21. I worked when I was 22. I traveled like 23, 24, probably home when I was 25.
Okay. Gotcha.
25 for sure. No earlier because I'm trying to do like the timeline. Yeah, I think 25.
Okay. What made you want to quit the accounting firm and just uproot your life and go waitress and then travel to a different country?
I mean, I was clearly bored, right? Like, I
Yeah.
think I had this accounting degree, so I applied at accounting firms and got this job, and I was like, I can do this. I remember like you would do, I did some auditing, which is like the actual worst job on the face of the earth. Like, you're knocking on people's door, being like, this like 30 cents doesn't check out here. Can you, it was like excruciating. But I had fun. Like it was a small accounting firm, and it was a fun group of people. We had fun.
Mhm.
But I did tax season. I remember tax season, like you could see how fast someone completed the tax return, the previous employee who worked on it the year prior. So I'd be like, okay, like last year, whoever the employee was did this tax return in 8 hours. I'm going to bill 6, and then I'm going to spend like my extra time. Like I'm going to bill 6, but I'll get it done in 4 and spend that extra 2 hours researching my trip to move abroad. I've always kind of just had like happy feet, a little bit of like a
Mm,
travel bug. So I just knew I wanted to move to another country.
yeah.
I knew that was what I wanted to do.
Yeah. That's so cool. So that was kind of my follow-up question was, did you always have that little itch to not do the status quo and go, because right now, somebody my age that landed a job like that right out of college, they'd be like, sweet, I'm set for life, like climb that ladder. Not a lot of people have the guts to get rid of something like that and go follow a passion of theirs.
I feel like that was the case in 2000. That's the case in 2006 though too, right?
Yeah.
And then the economy crashed in 08 and I was abroad then. Like I think I
Yeah.
probably quit a job then, right? And I had to
Hmm.
come home and there was no jobs. Like everyone's always like, "Oh, it's so much harder now." I'm like, "Is it?" Like I had a remote job before there was social media. Like I didn't even
Yeah.
document my trip. You know what I mean? Like TikTok wasn't even invented then.
Yeah.
Facebook was all there was, and it wasn't even, we weren't even using it. Like, so
Hmm.
I just am like, I feel like it's kind of a bunch of excuses. If you
Hmm.
really, if you feel that way, you probably just don't want to do it bad enough, which is
I like
fine.
that.
It's not
Hmm.
for everyone. You know what I mean? It's totally
Yeah.
not for everyone.
Yeah.
It's
I
not for
agree.
everyone, and it's not like you got to have like the right time and yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I love that. I agree with that 100%.
Like
So,
most of my friends, like 98% of my friends were like, yes, I got the job.
yeah.
Pumped, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm in corporate America, or I've got my job and I have my thing for life. I mean, it's not like I don't know.
Hmm.
That's,
Yeah.
that's the norm then as well. Where it's
Mhm.
not the norm is in Europe. Like it's very common for like 19-year-olds to take like gap year. So they graduate high
Mhm.
school and they go travel for a whole year and then they come back and go to university. So I was traveling with 3 girls from Ireland who were on their just like gap year. I think this is just
Uh,
like,
yeah.
probably privileged Europeans do.
Mm. Okay, that makes sense.
But I was able to work. Like my parents, people are always like, oh, like I'll get these haters on social media and they'll be like, oh, your parents paid for your trip. And I'm like, no, my parents haven't paid for anything since I was like 18. Like,
Yeah.
screw you. Like, yeah.
Yeah, there's always those
I lived
people.
off 8 grand a year. I stayed in $8 a night hostels in
That's
every
crazy.
country between Argentina and Colombia. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, our apartment in Mexico was probably $300 a month, like,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's crazy.
like it wasn't like I wasn't flying around on private jets, some like trustafarian, parent supported trip. I did it
Right.
myself.
Right. Living in luxury resorts
Yeah.
and stuff like
No, there
that.
was none of
Yeah.
that. It was a lot of hostels and
Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
So, you said that you had like kind of a health and wellness journey among all of that that led to Primal Kitchen and getting into that industry. I'd be curious to hear a little bit more about that and how you ended up in the industry that you did.
Yeah, sure. So I had met this girl actually in Colombia, the country of Colombia. And she was from California. I had this post prior to me moving here. She was like, "Oh, I have this friend who like had cancer, and her doctor always has her do this standard process, which is a company actually from Wisconsin. They like
Mm.
grow all their own herbs and stuff. Super cool company. They are just an herbal supplement company. She was like, every year she does this standard process cleanse. And I was like, oh, so cool. I grew up in the 80s in the Midwest in Chicago. So it was a lot of like, I mean, my mom cooked dinner every night, but it was a lot of like, you need to eat breakfast, like have a s'mores Pop Tart before you walk out the door, right? Or like, you need to, like,
Yeah.
let's come home and make like bagel bites or whatever. It was a lot of
Yeah.
like, it was the 80s. Like my poor mom didn't know any better. She's like the healthiest person ever nowadays. But, so anyway, where was I? What were we talking about?
You met her in Colombia. She had a
Oh,
friend that had
yes,
your
yes,
can
yes. So she
yeah.
told me to do this cleanse. So I came home like a year into my 2.5 year journey. I came home for my cousin's wedding and for a little bit of the summer, like a couple months. And I was like, Mom, let's do this cleanse together. So we did it. And it was like basically came with this little pamphlet that was like, don't eat dairy, gluten, like all the top allergens, like more or less the paleo diet, but I think even meat. So I was like just
Mhm.
eating fruits and vegetables for like 2 weeks while I took all these pills and did this cleanse. And I noticed that like lifelong like constipation issues, like I was on Allegra D for just like allergies, and this eye was always watering, like weird, just like little things where you wouldn't be like that person's unhealthy, just like maybe
Hmm.
low grade chronic stuff was there, just kind of like all went away. So then I just kind of kept up doing it. I pretty much like stopped drinking, I would say then at like 25. Like I don't know. I stopped drinking. And then when I tried to reintroduce drinking, I was like, oh, I get so hungover. Like it's just not worth it. And now I
Yeah.
like don't drink at all. And I really didn't. I mean, there was probably periods when I was like maybe dating, single, you go out and like have a few drinks, but I really kind of like quit the party lifestyle at like 25, I would say at that point in time. I was like, oh, I'm actually like quite, my personality doesn't change that much drunk anyway. Like it's fine.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah. So she kind of like got me into that. And then that led to like, I saw Food Inc., a great documentary when it was in the movie theater. I read Skinny Bitch. I read Michael Pollan's In Defense of Food, and the tagline of that is like eat food, not too much, mostly plants. And then
Yeah.
I read every other health book under the sun and tried every diet under the sun. Keto, like I did keto like before anyone had heard of keto. I'd hired this
Yeah.
woman, Maria Emmerich, and I was doing 20 total grams of carbohydrates a day. I did paleo, I was pescatarian, I did it all, right? Like,
Hmm.
and then I kind of netted out back to like Michael Pollan's book, like eat plants, eat food, not too much, mostly plants. I eat a ton of animal protein, but I think I went on a long journey to end up kind of like back where I started. I'm like, oh, I could have just like it's just not that we've really overcomplicated this like health
Yes.
thing, this
Yeah.
food thing. But anyway, so it just became like a personal kind of like passion and obsession of mine. And yeah, I got very into like food products that were, I just got very into like the industry and finding like a Kavita had like 2 grams of sugar in it, a kombucha with 2 grams of sugar in it, it was sweetened with stevia. So I just like loved that. I don't know. That was
Hmm.
kind of the entry for me.
Gotcha. So what was the like basis of Primal Kitchen? Like what was that founded on? What was the mission?
So Marcus, do you know Mark Sisson? Have you heard of him?
Yeah, after reaching out to you and like doing my research, but not before that.
Oh, funny. Most people
Yeah.
would he's way more famous than me. I'm the silent co-founder that like Mark's the face of the brand. He started blogging before blogging was cool and doing paleo before paleo was cool.
Gotcha.
Blogging is like probably not cool anymore. So he was like really ahead of his time on a trend that's like since probably passed.
Yeah.
Long before the days of Substack or whatever you young cool people are doing nowadays. But he was an ex triathlete. He placed fourth at Hawaii Ironman. He had been a lifelong like endurance athlete, coached
Hmm.
the Olympic triathlon team, like a very accomplished Olympic endurance athlete.
Yeah.
And he had his own kind of health revelation, if you will. He was working out so much and was kind of one of the first guys to spearhead like burning fat for fuel instead of carbohydrates. So back when he was in college, it was, a whole loaf of cinnamon raisin toast the night before race. And then he had switched to like, oh, I'll carry like nut butter when I go for a long bike ride or whatever. So he just was like
Hmm.
on kind of like the forefront of some of these just like, I don't know, diet trends that we almost just accept as like obvious now, right?
Yeah.
Like back when, Time Magazine was vilifying fat, and then there was like counterculture people who were like, wait a minute, canola oil is actually the problem and not butter and, whatever, those kinds of things. Like,
Hmm.
yeah, don't blame the burger for what the bun did. I don't know, that type of stuff. So
Yeah.
he was like considered one of the thought leaders of the paleo movement. And Mark had a little following, not little. I mean, he had 300,000 newsletter subscribers and a really well-read blog that still runs today called Mark's Daily Apple. And I just knew of him because I was a big fan of, I don't know, what he was espousing and so that's kind of how I made
Yeah.
the connection.
Okay. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, so when you got brought on, was it already kind of established and you just helped out
No,
or?
nothing was established. The
Okay.
name, he was going to call it Primal Blueprint. And I was like, that's a terrible name. You should call it Primal Kitchen. He was like working on different condiments. He had brought on this husband and wife team to help create the condiments. And like they were kind of a year in and it wasn't working out. So he let them go and said, can you step in and you can
Hmm.
just come on full. Like a year later, he's like, just come on full time and do this thing. So
Yeah.
that's when I came over. But I did
Okay.
all the package design in house. I hired the whole team. I everything.
Yeah.
Started the Instagram account on my phone, managed the 500 influencers direct our first year. We still do today, and Google
Yeah.
Sheets, like, the whole thing.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So why condiments out of everything in the food industry?
So I think some big, so this was like paleo, right? So it was,
Mm-hmm.
no processed food, but a big also, which now I feel like it's almost trending more now, right? The seed oils conversation is like
Yes.
more mainstream. It was not mainstream 12
Right.
years ago. This is like we launched the product in 2015. We started working on it 2 years before that. February
Mm-hmm.
2nd of 2015, we launched the mayonnaise. But we were just looking around the grocery store going like, Mark would say, like, you go to buy a salad dressing and literally there isn't a single salad dressing in the grocery store that doesn't have canola, soybeans, sunflower, safflower oil, or some combination thereof. So it just
Mm-hmm.
seemed like if we wanted it, there were other people who did too. And then we
Mm-hmm.
were big on just like no added sugar. So like mayonnaise is frequently like 75% oil plus eggs. Like almost every mayonnaise in the shelf has sugar in it. Like, why is there high fructose corn syrup in mayonnaise? Like, it's
Yeah.
crazy. So it was just some like basic, obvious nutrition tenets that we were like, we can
Mm-hmm.
do this better.
Yeah.
Um, but it's going to cost a lot. Like, our jar of mayonnaise costs $9.99. It's a 12-ounce jar and it's 75% oil. And oil, as you know, if you've bought olive oil from the grocery store, avocado oil, it's an expensive ingredient. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Okay.
um, so we were like, we have this product and people are either gonna buy it at 9.99 and we have a business, or they're not. And we don't have a business. We ran the lowest run we could run and we sold it out in a week. We thought it would last a year. So then we were kind of like off to the races.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so from your standpoint, was that, I mean, I guess it was because you guys were so successful, but like from my perspective, the seed oil thing and like the lower ingredients and the no added sugar has really only been super prevalent the past like 2 years from my perspective and like my consumption. So what do you think has shifted since then, or has it always been that prevalent and it just took longer to get to my generation?
I think it just took longer to reach you because it's
Yeah.
definitely was like, I mean, we sold our company to Kraft Heinz 6 years ago. So like Kraft
Mm,
Heinz realized
yeah.
that there was people who wanted this 6 years
Mm-hmm.
ago, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
we got our business to 50 million in revenue in 3.5 years. So I think sugar's been on the outs for a while. Like
Yeah.
we felt like canola oil was the high fructose corn syrup of fat. So really we were just like, where can we replace canola oil and how can we remove the sugar? So we
Mm-hmm.
like an unsweetened ketchup and a condiments with avocado oil without canola and soybean.
Mm-hmm. So as far as like seed oils go, for people that aren't familiar, what's the negativity behind that? Why should people stay away from stuff that contains those types of oils?
I mean, they're highly inflammatory, ultra processed seed oils. Canola oil comes from a plant called the rapeseed. They're just like very genetically modified
Mm,
monocrop type plants.
gotcha.
Avocado oil is pressed from the actual fruit of the avocado. So
Gotcha.
you can kind of just see the differences there.
Gotcha. So the processing of like avocado oil and olive oil are a lot like slower
It's
processed,
not even
or
the processing, it's just like think about the input ingredient, right?
mm,
Like and the whole, like, if you know anything about like the agriculture industry and just like the monocrop situation and how we've kind of like essentially what's happened in like corn, right? Like it's kind of the same with canola. It's like government subsidized monocrops that are then extracted into like as cheap of ingredients as possible
mm,
and proliferated throughout the food system, whether they're good for us or not.
okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
So do you
And
kind of
every
have
like oil or fat has a different like fatty acid profile. So
mhm,
one would argue that the composition of avocado and olive oil and coconut oil has a much more preferable fatty acid profile when it comes down to like omega 3s, sixes, and nines versus like a canola and soybean.
yeah. So going back, you said something about how um carbohydrates for energy versus fat, but it shifted kind of to like fat for energy versus carbohydrates. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I I have a health science degree, so I studied a little bit of nutrition. I like that's what I was taught was the carbs for fast digesting energy, but since getting into endurance sports, I've seen a lot more of like, no, you should have fats as your quick energy.
So I mean, it sounds like you're quite honestly like much more educated on this than I am. I
No.
was the endurance athlete like Mark is, but so he
Yeah.
could talk to you about like the
Yeah.
mechanics of the theory, but like Mark's theory would be like you
I
want to
see.
put your body into a state where you're burning ketones for fuel and not be in like a sugar burning carbohydrate
I
state.
see. I see.
So
Okay.
ketones are much more like efficient for fuel. They're much
Hmm.
more efficient for brain health. There's a lot of like actually a lot of the research done on the keto diet was came from this guy, very cool guy, met him in LA who had a son with like horrible epilepsy and was having like hundreds of seizures a day. He did brain surgery, all this stuff, like
Wow.
insane stuff for his son. And then dug into the literature before the internet when he was like in the library looking up medical books and found this one like therapeutic diet that was essentially like no carbohydrates, only ketones. And like after brain surgery and all this other stuff failed him, they put his son on the keto diet and his like epilepsy went virtually into like remission. Like it totally changed his
Wow.
life. So I think there's been a lot of scientific research on just the ketone,
Okay.
the whole keto diet and
Yeah.
the ketone situation.
Yeah.
I think there's
Okay.
some research on like tumor like treatment as well and just, I don't think all types of cancers, but I think specifically tumor cancers.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know. There's just some interesting stuff out there.
Gotcha. So, do you kind of live a more holistic view diet lifestyle now, or what does that come into fruition for how you do food?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly do. I have three kids, three boys that are 2, 4, and 6. So like I've
Wow.
definitely like loosened up the reins a little bit,
Yeah.
I think for my own sanity. But yeah, I'm very like mindful of
Yeah.
what I eat and I'm still obsessed with the health and wellness journey. And like I love researching and finding like the best supplements or the best whatever. So yeah, I'm
Yeah.
much into it. It's my life.
Yeah. Yeah. My little sister is getting her like holistic nutrition certification while she's still in school right now. She's
From
super.
IIN, Institute of Integrative Nutrition.
Yes. Yes.
Mark is actually like a speaker. He's like in the curriculum of IIN, so she'll
Oh,
know.
really?
Yeah, for sure.
That's awesome. Yeah, she's so into that. And she has taught me so much, like, because my degree was kind of, the basis of nutrition and then kind of getting into the diet culture stuff. And she's like, no, you need to do this whole food stuff and all of this, which has been so interesting. But the one thing that I've noticed with it transitioning more into like whole foods and clean ingredients is it's a little bit overwhelming coming from like the fitness industry, I guess the social media fitness industry where like diets and macros and hit your protein and hit your calories was really pushed. So from your perspective or your advice, if somebody was starting out and really wanting to live like a cleaner life and a healthier diet with like a baseline, what would you say would be the best place to start instead of going full force and being super overwhelmed?
I think it's really like so simple. We've just like totally overcomplicated
Yeah.
it. Like if you're eating meat, vegetables, and fruit, you're fine.
Mm-hmm.
That's my opinion. I don't
Okay.
have like an issue with meat. It just depends on where everyone's starting from, right? Like if you've
Yeah.
never thought about what you've eaten before and you're just like new to like, oh, this concept of like what I eat makes a difference in how I feel. Um,
Mm-hmm.
But nowadays it feels like who are those people anymore? You'd have to be living under a rock. Like 10 years ago, maybe, but now it seems like, I don't know, people are just paying more attention, or maybe I'm just like been in LA too long. But yeah, I feel like eliminating processed food is just like half
Mm-hmm.
the, and everything from there is like upside.
Gotcha.
As much real whole fruits, vegetables, and protein you can eat, I
Mm-hmm.
think you've literally solved 80% of the problem.
Right, right.
Everything from there is like tweaking. And there
Okay.
is a big debate between these like paleo, even almost a vegan, this might be the only thing they agree on, versus like the nutrition science, like the macro counting Lane Nortons of the world. Like it doesn't matter what you eat as long as it's hitting your macro target. Like
Yeah.
there's definitely like a differing of but this is what I mean. Like there's a big Venn diagram and like all the diets, like the circle is big that overlaps in the middle. And there's just a few like fringe things left out on the side. Tofu, is it, that would be something that the vegans and the paleo people would argue about. Like I think now, I mean, I'm very passionate about just protein. I feel like it's one of the most
Yeah.
like well researched. I don't think there's any other like food substance that's been as researched as protein has on just its effect on satiation. If you have protein for breakfast, anti-aging, for muscle preservation, weight loss, like the studies are just numerous.
Yeah.
And so I'm actually launching a carbonated water with protein in it. So imagine like a Spindrift or a Poppy with
Oh,
2 grams of sugar, but has 12 grams of protein in it. Because I'm just like someone who's trying to eat more protein and like finding that hard to do as a mom of three. Like I don't
yeah.
even eat 3 meals a day. I mean, breakfast is like matcha with collagen and creatine, and I'm like off to the races. So
Yeah. Okay.
um yeah. So I'm passionate about that.
Yeah.
I think I feel like the whole world's like 12 years ago when you launched Primal Kitchen, it was a big like, if you were in the health space, you were like, are you paleo or are you vegan? That was like, they were like in war with each other. Now I feel like nobody even associates with like, who talks about paleo anymore? It's like nobody,
Yeah.
really.
Nobody.
Nobody. COVID, all the health like labels all kind of died during COVID. I swear.
Mhm.
Like everything just kind of like, I don't know.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. Really, the only thing you see now is like the carnivore diet, the
Yeah.
animal-based diet, which is just essentially eating
And protein.
meat.
Everyone's
Yeah,
trying to get their
protein.
protein.
Yeah. How
Yeah.
are you getting protein in a carbonated water? Like, what's the protein source in there?
It's a whey protein isolate that's clear.
Okay,
So it's like
gotcha.
fully dissolvable. It's not like thick. The flavors are like orange, grapefruit, like lemon, lime. You can make it taste
Nice.
like a soda, but it's
Cool.
yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome. That
Yeah.
would be so helpful for so many people who can't
I
stand
hope.
protein
I'm
shakes.
excited. Yeah.
Very cool. So back to like the baseline, like protein, fruits and veggies is like the start. Would you say then the level up is getting like high quality proteins like grass fed, pasture raised, or should you start there no matter what?
I think everybody's just like got to do the best they can do, right? Like
Yeah.
I think if the decision is between like having a Twinkie and a ho-ho for breakfast or like having some conventional sausage, like you're probably better off with sausage, to be honest. I don't
Mhm.
know. Like that's maybe processed meat might be a little controversial, but meaning hot dog sausage and bacon's probably
Yeah.
not the best example. But I would maybe even still stand by that being better than a ho-ho and a Twinkie for breakfast. But
Oh yeah.
I, yeah, no, I think everybody can just do the best they're doing, right? Like,
Hmm.
yeah,
Okay. Cool.
yeah.
Um, so from like the business standpoint, what is your, I guess you consider like you're an entrepreneur. Um, was that something that was ever in your like scope of mindset, or did you ever consider yourself being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I definitely
Yeah,
did. I have like journals of business ideas and like for
nice.
sure wanted to be an entrepreneur for sure.
Yeah.
I also thought about a lot of jobs in my 20s. And then I
Hmm.
remember when I started at Kavita telling Amanda who hired me, I was like, well, one day I just want to like have my own thing. And she's like, well, there's like literally nothing better that you could do than come work now at Kavita and see a business like in the startup phase, the
Mm,
whole thing. So yeah, I think that was always in the back of my mind.
gotcha. So
Yeah.
would you say for somebody in their 20s that has that mindset to go work for a startup, was that super beneficial to
For
where you are
sure,
now?
100%, a million times over.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't even have to be a startup, even just a small, I'm like, if you look at my career trajectory, like I did work for Kraft Heinz since we exited Primal Kitchen. I stayed there for 5 years, which is, I'm still advising with them today. I have lots of great friends there. When I was at the advertising agency, I managed like the Frito-Lay account, SC Johnson, big corporate accounts, but I've always been at small businesses and I just
Mhm.
like love small businesses. I think if you're a go-getter, like, I don't know, I think it's a great way to be able to like level up your career in a faster timeline than like riding it out on some like in some corporate structure that's like every 18 months you get a promotion and you go
Yeah.
from the associate to the junior associate to the senior associate to the, I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's just like I think you got to like sit down and know like what do you value? Like I could
Mhm.
tell you that like I value like freedom, adventure. Like these are two of my like and community, I would say. Like those are my three like top values, right? Outside of like family and all of that. So
Yeah.
like for me, someone else who might have had like an unstable upbringing, for instance, might value like safety, security, and like financial security, right? Like I have always like quit jobs without knowing what the next thing was and like figured it out.
Mm-hmm.
So like it's definitely more of like a roller coaster, but I think I've like starting to at 40 now, I'm kind of like, oh, this is just like who I am. Like
Yeah.
I must enjoy this ride or else I wouldn't keep doing it over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, just knowing that about yourself. But a lot of times until you just go and have a bunch of life experience, it's hard to even just know yourself. So like
Yeah.
anything you can do to have more life experience that helps you just know yourself better, I feel like is a win.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if somebody was on the fence in like their early 20s of going and getting all of that life experience versus hunkering down and trying to figure out the business they want to start and be successful, what advice would you give them? Would you tell them to go, or would you tell them to follow the passion and start the grind now?
I think you gotta, this is gonna sound crazy, but you just need to do both. You need to
Okay.
go take the job and you need to like start the grind on the side. Like there's
Yeah.
nothing more stressful than like having no money coming in, bills are piling up, and you're just like spending money to get a business off the ground because
Yeah.
every day you're not working, you're essentially spending money you could have spent that day earning, right? So like
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's like that black and white. I've never really like sat in a silo and like brainstormed an idea and been like, I mean, I'm launching a new business now and I have consulting clients on the side and I'm not even like I'm post exit and I'm not even sitting here like, okay, I'm going to block myself in a room and come up with a business idea.
Yeah.
I think you at least need a side hustle or a waitressing job or something. Big fan. It's my
Mm-hmm.
favorite job I've ever had. Big fan of being a waitress. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I just saw that today on Instagram. I can't remember who said it. She's like a money entrepreneur, talks like does like TED Talks and stuff. But she said that there's like a statistic that 33%, it's like a 33% more chance of being successful in the business that you're creating if you do that on the side of your actual job because of that stress of like money coming in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel
Which,
like it
yeah.
would just put you in a mindset of like kind of desperation versus being in like an abundant mindset, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so yeah.
Yeah. I experience that all the time. I work like three different jobs and then do this podcast. And it's almost like comforting to listen to people talk about that and like the grind because I'm like, okay, this is the grind. This is the grind. Like it's gonna get better. It's gonna, change, but at least I have all of the, it'd be so much worse if I was just podcasting and had zero money coming in. Like, how would I grow? How would
Yeah,
I produce better if I didn't have any money in my bank account?
totally.
Yeah. So, um, I guess looking back at your 20s, you did the travel and then when did you get into, um, like what age did you get into Primal Kitchen? Were you an employee until you got there, or did you start any entrepreneurship in your 20s?
I was a consultant and
Okay.
I had other consulting clients. I was working for like, so yeah, I guess that's kind of entrepreneurial. I like
Yeah.
quit my full-time job with nothing lined up and started just like building websites for people and like doing random things.
Okay.
Consulting for an exercise company. Mark paid me $50 an hour and I was a consultant for him at 28 when he hired
Yeah.
me.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
And consulting in the accounting realm or just
No,
like a
no,
bunch of
I
different
like never
stuff?
looked, I never did
Never
accounting.
went back to
No, yeah.
that.
No, I
No.
mean, I'm like P&L management and just understanding like a financial statements and stuff I
Yeah.
utilize, but no, I never did accounting yet. No, more like marketing, website building, branding, graphic design stuff, like just
Hmm.
random people I met. And I helped these guys from Columbia produce this documentary. I don't know. I was
Oh,
just doing
cool.
all sorts of random like
Yeah.
LA stuff. Everyone in LA is doing like a little bit of this, a little bit of that
Yeah.
thing.
Is
So,
is that how you learned those skills? Was just through like bopping around different gigs or
um, yeah. And I guess you just kind of like fake it till you make it and pick them
yeah.
up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So,
Yeah.
looking back on your 20s or sitting with a 24-year-old like me, is there like a piece of advice that you would group together for anybody that's looking to find more fulfillment or success, or maybe something that somebody told you that really helped you get to where you're at, or just something that you kind of live by that could shed a little light for us 20 somethings that are trying to figure it out?
Yeah, I think I see a lot. Well, I hear from you guys on TikTok, but I see a lot of like 20 somethings who just feel like they're supposed to have it all figured out. They're like, oh my God, like the desperation at that age. And I'm just like,
Mhm.
you are not supposed to have anything figured out. Like, and guess what? Like you're going to be 30 and then you're going to figure it out. You're going to figure it out all over again. And then you're going to like, you're going to sell your company, you're going to get married, have 3 kids, then you're going to be like figuring out all over again at 40. Like that is just kind of the joy of life. And so if we had it all figured out, it's like so boring. So I think just maintaining like that 60,000 foot perspective in just life is short. I'm young. There's not a lot of consequences of trying and failing before you have a family and there's a bunch of people reliant on you in your 20s. Like, I think it's a great time to quit the job when you're ready, even if you don't have the next thing lined up, like waitress, do a little bit of this, try that, do some career field, you go work for a small business. There's just so much opportunity to just try so many different things at that age. So
Mm-hmm.
you just don't need to have it all figured out. You're never going to have it all figured out. Nobody knows what they're doing. Everybody's faking it. It's going
Yeah.
to go on like this forever. So it's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
You got this.
That's like the common denominator of what I've learned from this podcast is no matter the age or how successful, everybody that comes on here is like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. I have nothing figured out. I'm like, okay, cool. So we're good.
Yeah,
We're good where we're at right now, just one day at a time.
totally.
Awesome. I think that's like a great kind of place to wrap everything together. Was there any like final thoughts or words or pieces that we missed that you wanted to touch on?
No, I think this kind of does it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, you have such a cool story. I really appreciate you sharing it. Um, that shed so much light on like all of the different things you can do in your 20s, which is really cool.
No, it was good. It was a good ride.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Well, thanks
awesome.
so much for having me. It was great to meet you.
Yeah, you as well.